Tonight on Primetime Politics, another exit from the Conservative caucus. Alberta MP Matt Genereux says he's resigning from the House. And a big boost for national defence. The government is promising billions more for the military. What does it mean for those in uniform and for Canada's NATO commitments? We asked the Minister of Defence, David McGuinty. Also, the Liberals need more votes to pass its budget, but the Green leader says she's a no unless there are changes. Elizabeth May tells us what she wants to see. And
we've got $25 billion in the federal budget to scale projects like this across the country.
Some provinces, though, are unhappy with Mark Carney's plan, especially when it comes to infrastructure. We'll get the view from New Brunswick. Finance Minister René Legacy joins us. This is Primetime Politics. Hello everyone, I'm Andrew Thomson in for Michael Serapio. We begin with a big development on Parliament Hill tonight. The Conservative caucus is losing another MP. This time it is Edmonton's Matt Genereux, who says he's resigning from the House of Commons. Genereux saying it was not an easy decision, but he believes the right one, adding he hopes to address the House one final time in the future. Genereux's departure follows Chris d'Entremont leaving the Conservatives for the Liberal caucus earlier this week. Meanwhile, tonight, the federal budget has cleared its first hurdle in the House. MPs have rejected a Conservative change to the government's budget motion. This was being treated as a confidence vote. Conservatives were arguing the budget will lead to higher taxes and inflation, and that it offers no plan for pipelines. The next budget vote is on the Block's amendment. That is expected tomorrow. It is also a confidence vote. Now, national defense is a big part of this budget. There's a promise to rebuild, to rearm, and to reinvest. And with that pledge comes more money, more than $70 billion over 5 years. That's in addition to $9 billion announced earlier this year. Let's talk about all these numbers with Canada's Minister of National Defense. That is David McGuinty. Minister, good to see you.
Good evening, Andrew.
We had heard $62.7 billion as the defense budget for this fiscal year going into this budget. How do the numbers in this budget change that number for this year and the spending number for your department for the new fiscal year that's going to be starting next spring?
Well, the first thing for viewers to remember is that we made the important decision some months ago to meet the 2% GDP target for NATO a full 5 years ahead of schedule. We're doing this by March 31st. That's why the Prime Minister announced an extra $9.3 billion of funding to do precisely as you indicated, to rearm and to, frankly, reinvigorate all of our Canadian Armed Forces, recruiting and retaining, etc. So we're making those investments as we go forward, and the women and the men of the Canadian Armed Forces deserve it.
Now, among this money, there is $18 billion over 5 years for equipment. The budget talks about additional logistics utility, light utility, armored vehicles, counter-drone capabilities. Can you be a bit more specific about what you're looking for in this category? What type of weaponry are we talking for Canadian Forces personnel?
Well, listen, we're looking at the full gamut of tools and equipment that are required. It's been a long time since we've actually taken a long, hard look at the stock and the inventory that we have. We have much machinery both here and abroad in Latvia. We're looking to improve, to retrofit, to replace LAVs, LUVs, different kinds of armored vehicles, ambulance-type structures and ambulance-type vehicles, kit, weapons, rifles, ammunition. All of this is being reevaluated, David, or forgive me, Andrew, as well as everything that's going on in our bases. We have 33 bases in this country. We have to retrofit their housing, water, wastewater, electric systems. We've let this fall a considerable distance, and this is a very important investment in our economy at the same time, because not only we are investing in our women and men of the forces, we're investing in all of the procurement that'll go alongside it to repair, retrofit, and rebuild.
Okay, now the budget does talk a lot about spending, but the budget also talks a lot about savings, as you know, right across the federal government. Now, national defense does not face as high a requirement to find savings as most other departments. You do need to find a 2% reduction. So where exactly are those savings going to come from?
Well, the savings involve efficiencies that we've explained in the budget. We're talking about making some transfers. Look, the basic premise here is we want to move some operational money into our investment bucket. We believe in investing, and as the Prime Minister's indicated, about $1 trillion in our economy going forward. We want to hyper-stimulate a couple of core sectors, and one of which is defense. We're going to create a lot of jobs. We've already got 600 companies in this country in this industry sector. Now we're launching a new defense industrial sector for the future. It's comprehensive. It's the first of its kind in Canadian history. We've talked to over 1,000 companies, 17 other countries to find out how did they do it, how are they doing it, what worked, what didn't work. And we'll have more to say about this when we announce the Defence Industrial Strategy. We've also taken another big step here, Andrew, and we've created a new procurement agency. And this procurement agency is going to specialize in buying anything over $100 million. This will really bring together the kinds of professionals that we need to make these important procurements for our system and the equipment we need.
All right, I do want to go back to NATO. You talked about that 2% target in your first answer. This budget says there is a path to Canada meeting NATO's expanded spending target. This is the 5% of GDP by the year 2035. Now, this budget lays out spending through 2030. That $82 billion odd dollars is just over the next 5 years. So by the time we get to 2030, where will we be by that point in terms of meeting that NATO commitment? Can we get a bit more specificity just on the numbers of where we're going to be over the next decade?
Pretty hard to predict where we're going to be in terms of GDP in 5 years, right? The economy is going to grow. We're going to work hard to grow it even bigger, grow that pie. And so obviously the numbers will be affected by that growth in the economy. Once again, that's why we're bearing down on the defense industrial sector to be able to give rise to more than 82,000 jobs we already have in this sector full-time and 200,000 part-time jobs. This is about creating wealth. This is about launching companies. It's about creating jobs. It's about doing so also in a very local way. Andrew, here's an example. I was at Trenton, one of our major Air Force bases, to see the retrofitting that has to take place, about $900 million, to prepare for the arrival of a new series of refueling planes that will refuel our fighter jets. That investment is going to create over 1,000 full-time jobs in the Trenton area for years. So we see this happening over and over and over again across the country, and we're just beginning. We're very encouraged, and Canadians should realize this is going to create a lot of wealth and a lot of jobs.
Okay, you're talking about the economic spin-offs, and so much of this budget overall is, of course, a response to economic uncertainty, the trade uncertainty, and the changing nature of our relationship with the United States. So I do want to ask, how you would assess the current state of our defense relationship with the U.S., given the fact that we do have this economic tension.
Our relationship is strong, but we have made a decision. The Prime Minister's been clear. We're going to be diversifying our relationships on the defense and military front. Just come back from Asia with the Prime Minister in Korea and the Philippines, where we signed 2 new deals, for example, 2 new agreements, which will allow us again to participate on the procurement side. We have 30 companies in one country, 20 in the other, already doing business. Look, we're managing our relationship very well with the United States. We're obviously working to get an economic deal, but on the security, on the intelligence, and on the defense front, Andrew, we're very tight, we're very strong.
Okay, you mentioned your trip to Asia. You and the Prime Minister toured the Hanwha shipyard in South Korea as a potential supplier of new submarines. There's also a German firm in the running. So what is your time frame for that major decision on procurement?
Well, the first thing to know is that we've created a whole new procurement agency. We've professionalized it. We have a new CEO coming in from Toronto to help run it. The job will be to actually launch the procurement. We've gone from 5 to 2 potential suppliers. That in itself has accelerated the process by about 2 years. We're moving quickly, we're moving with great discipline, we're moving objectively. We're going to be obviously negotiating as hard as we can to get as many industrial benefits, create as many jobs, looking at the long-term relationship with whatever company we choose, 30, 40 years. That means sustainment. In other words, it means servicing those submarines in Canada. That also has a knock-on effect, creates jobs, parts, a whole ecosystem. All of this is underway, and we'll take the time we need to get it right.
Okay, finally, I do want to ask you about another big procurement. That is the F-35 and the government's internal review. Now, initially, we were told to expect something on this by the end of summer. You told MPs recently that the review is ongoing. So when will Canadians know whether or not you're sticking with the plan to buy all F-35s?
What I can tell you is that the review is ongoing, and it's being taken very seriously. Things are being examined very, very carefully, very closely, and that's basically what we're letting happen. This is the important part of this process before we decide to make a final decision, and so we're going to take the time we need.
All right, Defence Minister David McGuinty, thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you, Andrew.
Well, earlier we talked about today's first budget vote, a Conservative sub-amendment that failed in the House. However, there are more budget votes to come, and the Green Party leader says she won't be supporting the government unless there are changes to the budget. Elizabeth May is joining me now from Parliament Hill. Miss May, good to speak with you again.
Good to talk to you, Andrew.
So let's start with this. What exact changes do you want to see?
Well, what we need to see from Mark Carney's government is some of the things that we thought he stood for during the election, such as climate action. Certainly from his history, writing the book Values, he gave a quite famous speech 10 years ago to a Lloyd's of London gathering, saying, that we'll face catastrophic damage to our planet unless we act. So the budget is really absolutely silent on climate action. It doesn't even mention the Paris Agreement, doesn't mention a commitment to our targets. It's very clear that we're very much off track, and that the Prime Minister has to say clearly that he is still committed to our legally binding targets. He says, I don't care about targets, I want results. Well, I'm sorry. Those results have to be in line with our international legally binding commitments to ensure that our children have a livable world. This is not a small or side peripheral issue in the life of a country. Canada's success rather depends on a livable planet. So we need to hear that from the Prime Minister. And right now, key climate programs are cut. They're on the chopping block floor at this point. And what we're hearing is, let's boost fossil fuel subsidies. That is not what I expected to see. So those things need to change.
You sat down with Prime Minister Mark Carney ahead of the budget. Was anything you raised with him included? You've gone through what you're opposed to, but was there anything that you raised that you saw in this budget?
Well, I have to say, I had a really good conversation with the Prime Minister. We've known each other a long time, and the only meeting we've had of any kind, we didn't even, other than a phone call on election night, since April 28th, we've spoken exactly once, and that was on October 2nd. Now, we had submitted extensive pre-budget recommendations in August. The Prime Minister and I didn't walk through those one at a time. We had a more I'd say high-level conversation. The things we talked about are not, I mean, in terms of specifics and things that I really pressed, no, they're not in the budget.
So I guess the follow-up question to that would be, since the budget was tabled on Tuesday afternoon, have you had any talks with the government about your vote?
Yes, I've had a couple of conversations with different ministers within the government, and I'm hoping to have a conversation with the Finance Minister and the Prime Minister, and I'm hoping they'll be open to making the kind of modifications that would mean I can vote yes.
So we've had one floor crossing this week from the Conservatives to the Liberals. Others have been rumored. It is possible you could end up holding the balance of power on this budget and ultimately being a deciding vote in whether the government falls. So if you had to choose right now between passing this budget and sending Canadians into another election, which way would you go?
Oh, those are impossible questions. I mean, what do you choose? I told the government House Leader Steve McKinnon when he, at one point, this was before I'd read the budget, before it had been tabled, and he said, well, you mean you'd vote for an election? I said, no, I wouldn't vote for an election. I don't want an election. But if your budget includes big increases and supporting the fossil fuel industry, supporting more emissions, I'm going to vote for my granddaughter's future. And that's not something, I'm not going to compromise on what future generations have to tolerate on this planet when we, in our generation, in our time, right now, have the opportunity to make the right choices. So I don't want an election, but I'm not going to abandon my grandchildren.
Do you think because of the current numbers, the Liberals now just a couple of seats short, that they are really interested in your vote specifically? I mean, you've mentioned some of the discussions you've had. What sense are you getting from them?
I'm not exactly certain, but I do get a sense that there's an openness to wanting to talk, to try to figure out if there's a way to make sure that I feel comfortable, that I'm prepared on scientific and moral grounds to vote for this budget. I mean, on economic grounds, this budget has a huge deficit. They didn't need to do that. I've suggested to them some of the things I pressed the most of the Prime Minister when we met were ways to increase government revenues so we could drive down the deficit. People don't necessarily know that during the election it was the Green Party platform that reduced the deficit more than any other party. The studies we asked the Parliamentary Budget Office to do on ideas we have that would work and not hurt Canadians in their pocketbook, those are still on the PBO website. People can look them up. We're very committed to a sustainable future for Canada. We're very committed to our economy surviving and thriving in spite of the erratic and illegal behaviors of Donald Trump. All of that said, you can't hold one against the other and say, if there's a risk of an election, will you vote in a way that creates an election if the alternative is impossible to imagine that we abandon climate action when we're at the very point of, we're standing on the edge of too late, Andrew. I don't know how else to describe it. Climate science, the amount of greenhouse gases that are already in the atmosphere have baked in for our children a very difficult time. If we continue to allow greenhouse gases to expand and grow, we really have the risk of the loss of human civilization. When we are, as adults and reasonable people who are responsible in our actions, we can't choose to say, oh, it's hard doing stuff on climate now because what? Because Trump. That's not good enough.
Okay, one last question on this point. Given the importance, the rhetorical importance, we've heard from the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister talking about this as a generational budget, a budget to build Canada strong in this new era. Do you feel realistic at all that the government is actually open to changes, given the real importance that they've put into this document on so many fronts, not just climate, but also immigration, defense, infrastructure?
Look, those goals can be achieved, I think, on an economic basis as well. I think when you look at some of the economic analysis from those who are looking at this budget, it's a gamble. You don't know that if you hit the lowest marginal tax rate for foreign corporations and get in below the U.S., right? This is coming in the budget itself. It says we're going to beat Trump's big, beautiful bill with our productivity super deduction. It might not work. It's a gamble. So it's economically a gamble, it's a huge deficit, and things that could work better aren't in there. But again, I have a lot of sympathy for Prime Minister Carney. Negotiating with Trump is almost impossible. The man is, famously erratic and unpredictable, but we have to protect our own economy. We can build domestically. We can protect our natural resources with strategic reserves of our natural resources that we have pressed upon the Prime Minister. Look at these ideas and see if we can't protect our economy from the erratic behavior of Donald Trump, and at the same time not decide that it's a trade-off and our children's future go down the drains because we're distracted by something else.
Okay, one very last quick question for you. You've already said you won't lead the Green Party in the next federal election. Is your party then ready for an election if it comes in the immediate future?
Of course, I obviously have to lead the party into the next federal election if it happens tomorrow. I'm the leader of the party. But my intention very strongly is that, and certainly we hope that there won't be an imminent election. We hope that the government will, and that the Liberals will realize the opposition parties are open to negotiating. We're open to talking. We want, and I want to say we, I mean, I'm only one vote, but there are 7 NDP votes. I think they're open as well to talking. I won't speak for them, but there's an opportunity here for the Prime Minister to show some flexibility to make sure that I, as leader of the Green Party, and that others potentially in the House can vote for the budget. That's obviously our preference. We don't want the government to fall and to be, of course, even if the government falls, we're not necessarily thrown into an election. A new coalition of parties could go to the Governor General and say, look, we can hold the confidence of the House even though the rookie prime minister blew it and lost confidence in the House. Let's hope that doesn't happen. Let's hope we don't have a confidence vote that fails, but it doesn't automatically plunge us into an election. We're a democracy of the Westminster parliamentary type, which means that we have a way to work together in Parliament to hold the confidence of the House and make sure we don't go to an election.
Okay, Green Party leader Elizabeth May, thanks for your time as always.
Thank you, Andrew.
Well, the Prime Minister is once again out selling his government's first budget today. Mark Carney touring a health research facility in Ottawa and visiting a community housing site under construction in the capital.
We've got $25 billion in the federal budget to scale projects like this across the country. And then on top of that, the federal government has a lot of land, over time, and it's being consolidated under the Minister of Housing, so that we've got a land bank so that we can move quickly and coordinating with the city so that that land can be zoned so that we're building projects. And one of the big messages is, exactly what you're doing, different variants obviously in different places. We're just going to keep doing this at scale for decades because we need to catch up on affordable housing.
Well, let's bring in the Finance Minister of New Brunswick. That is René Legacy. He's also Deputy Premier and Minister of Energy. Minister, good to see you.
Good evening.
Your Premier, Susan Holt, said that there is a lot in the federal budget that aligns with New Brunswick's strengths and the ways your government wants to build the economy. So tell us exactly how does it align and in what ways does New Brunswick want to build?
Well, first of all, let's go with the point that we've had multiple discussions with Minister Champagne over the last year. The first ministers, and one of the big aspects and one of the big asks was we needed to reinvest in infrastructure. So it was very encouraging to feel that we were listened to. We hadn't had the IBA in a few years. A lot of people were waiting to move on some infrastructure, so I think we see some positives there. But as far as aligning with New Brunswick, we've been pushing a few development agendas that we feel aligns very well around critical minerals and mining. We have a project around Sisson Mine and a few others because New Brunswick, I believe, has 23 of the 30 or so critical minerals that are being sought after across the world. We also see some potential investments in port infrastructures. We have the St. John port that is a large container port that has been growing by leaps and bounds, and we have a port in Baldoon that does more of the aggregate and does a lot of connections with Europe. We have two projects there that we feel are very interesting that we could probably develop on. And we also we had some concerns with tariffs around the forestry industry that is a big part of the New Brunswick economy. So we know the automotive center has been front and center in Ontario and how the tariffs have impacted Ontario on this. We're starting to feel that forestry is becoming probably in the same light. So the fact that they acknowledge that is a positive. So there's a lot of alignment. There's other things that we're looking at also, but I think on a large scale, there's some positives there.
Okay, and I want to get back to forestry in a moment, but you mentioned infrastructure, and in this budget we've got a promise of a new federal fund to deliver that money. The Federation of Canadian Municipalities says that's great, but it's only great if that money gets to local governments faster and more efficiently. Do you share that concern?
I agree. We've been waiting for a new program for a while. The faster we can get building, the faster we can actually have those infrastructures being put to use. So it is always a struggle for us to make sure that the programs and the building gets done fast enough. So obviously, if much of the time is put around approvals and actually getting it the front end done, it's not helpful. So I sort of see that there's a strong desire by this government to cut down on that aspect of it, all the logistics. So I have good faith that we're going to see an improved model.
Okay, let's get back to forestry then. You mentioned that as a big part of your province, a big key export, lumber. The budget cites $1.2 billion for loan guarantees and programs to diversify markets. This is following support announcements by the Carney government. But were you looking for more in this budget this week?
Oh, well, listen, the fact that it's there, I know our industry has been in conversation through our Natural Resources Department and our excellent Minister of Natural Resources that's also been in regular discussions with Ottawa to try to mitigate as much as the impact on the U.S. tariffs that, you know, keep changing. Obviously, we know they change on a regular, to try to adjust and make sure that this that we get past this, I guess, this time frame. This has been a long time file that we've been working on. To see if it was everything that the industry was looking for or the department, I haven't gotten a full briefing yet from DNR. But at least it's encouraging that it was highlighted and that there's acknowledgement that there's a concern around that industry. Sorry.
Okay, sticking with natural resources, you mentioned critical minerals a bit earlier, the fact that New Brunswick has 21 of the 34 minerals that are deemed critical minerals in Canada. We've got the government planning this $2 billion critical minerals sovereign fund. So let's dig into that a bit deeper with what specific projects in your province could stand to benefit from this.
Well, we have a project that's almost ready at this point. It's the Sisson mine. It's a tungsten mine in southern New Brunswick. It's already gone through the environmental impact assessment, and it's been conditionally approved. With the promoter has to answer to a series of requirements for the environment. But that big step's been done. So there was some specific asks and negotiations between, again, DNR and Ottawa. And I think those are ongoing. But if Ottawa was looking for some ready projects that we kind of see some results fairly quickly, I would say that is definitely one that would be top of list for us.
Okay, we have a moment left, and I want to turn to defense spending because that's a big part of this federal budget. It's poised to see a big jump over 5 years. Defense plays an important role in your province. You've got the Gagetown base, New Brunswick also known for being home to cybersecurity and defense expertise. Where are you anticipating that New Brunswick will benefit from this boost to defense spending?
Well, I think that, and that's typically what happens after the federal budget. We have our departments scan through all the documents, start reaching out to their counterparts in Ottawa to see, okay, where what fits, what can we get done. The benefit, and I don't think we've had a chance to mention this too much publicly, but the benefit of having the budget at this time of year coincides exactly where the provincial departments are preparing our ordinary budget and our capital budget. We're in the midst of having those discussions right now. So certainly by having the federal budget come out at this time allows us to kind of align all our projects and what we were hoping to get accomplished, and to see if we can partner up on those with the federal government. So I know Minister Champagne was kind of surveying to see if we like the spring budgets or the fall budgets, and I think personally I can't myself definitely in the fall budget.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Finance Minister René Legacy, thanks so much for giving us the perspective from New Brunswick.
Thank you very much.
And that is Primetime Politics for Thursday, November 6th. Michael Serapio is back here with you tomorrow. For now, I'm Andrew Thomson, saying so long from all of us at CPAC. Have a great evening.